theme running through presenters today. Simon was also a co-founder, Simon Hay from Firefly, along with his co-founder. They both met at secondary school. So Simon, without further ado, I'll leave it to you.
Thanks very much. So I'm Simon. I'm one of the co-founders of Firefly Learning. We do software as a service for schools. So we help connect students and teachers and parents so that they can create and share and learn online together. We don't have quite the same pedigree as the My First Year's team. Joe and I have only been doing this together since we were 13. But there's definitely some similarities, some parallels there, which we can go through. Got some slides. Do I need to do something, or is this? There we go. So the problem that we're trying to solve is that although there is an awful lot more technology in schools these days, the fundamental processes and the ways that students and teachers work and interact really hasn't changed very much since this Victorian classroom. I think that education is one of the few remaining industries that hasn't yet been transformed by tech in the way that nearly every other one has. But I think that is clearly changing, and it's going to be an incoming tide rather than a tsunami. But I think that the potential that technology has to really make a difference to students' learning experiences and ultimately outcomes is enormous. And I think that we're at a time when education has never been more important. And technology is the way that we know to drive that. So our vision as a business is to transform learning by empowering students and their teachers and their parents with smarter technology. We sort of very deliberately put those three groups of constituents in that order because we started this business as students ourselves and think that having them as our first and foremost focus really matters and really differentiates us from a lot of other providers out there. So the problems that we're trying to solve, I guess, are the sort of core processes that make up a lot of school life. Setting students' homework, collecting it in, marking it, tracking their progress, reporting on that progress to people, creating and curating and sharing resources, engaging parents in the day-to-day learning conversations are all things that take up huge amounts of time and are very inefficient and can be made a lot better with a bit of smarter tech. So we put together a 2-minute video just to give you an idea of what it is that Firefly does for schools. Can we have some sound?
Teachers, students, and parents. Teachers have more time to teach by using Firefly to manage and plan lessons for all of their classes, including writing new lesson plans when they're on the go from the Firefly app. When it comes time to set homework, it takes just a few clicks to create and assign new tasks. It's simple to tell students what's required by creating beautifully formatted descriptions, and to enrich tasks with videos from YouTube or other sources by simply copying and pasting them. You can even create amazing galleries with a simple drag and drop. Once the task is set, students are alerted immediately and can view the task right there on their mobile, so they can stay on top of their homework from anywhere. They can view the task on multiple devices and hand in work via Firefly in whichever format they wish. Once completed, the teacher can access the homework right away. It's easy to review the file and add annotations without ever leaving Firefly. teachers can mark the work in the way that works for them, such as adding written feedback or marks and grades. Once ready, the teachers can release the marks. If they so choose, they can store marks, grades and feedback in their mark book. And they have access to the full student profiles. Sharing success with parents is just a click away. And with our parent app, it's easy to keep them in the loop too. Firefly. More time to teach, more ways to learn.
So hopefully that gives you some indication of the problems that we're trying to solve. We think obviously that there's a huge amount that we can do to improve teacher productivity. There's a recruitment and retention crisis in teaching at the moment because teachers are being asked to do more and more in less time. So we want them not to be spending that slaving over hot photocopiers or working long into the night, creating resources and lesson plans, duplicating work that's been done multiple times already, carrying huge piles of books around. We want to personalize learning for the students, so rather than an entire class having to do exactly the same thing at exactly the same time, allowing teachers to use their understanding of those students to adjust and adapt the material and the style of delivery and the pace of learning to suit each one individually. We want to help teachers to give really effective formative feedback to those students to help them improve. This is one of the things that the academic research shows makes the biggest difference to students' outcomes. We want to give visibility into what is going on to leaders at every level, so make it easier for school leaders to drive whole school improvement by being able to understand what's happening in the classrooms without having to walk the corridors and pull bits of paper that are composting at the bottom of bags out and to try and get some picture of students' progress. And we want to engage parents in the day-to-day learning conversations that are happening. So rather than them getting a retrospective dump of information a couple of times a year when it's far too late to do anything about it, they can be involved with what is going on in a timely fashion and be able to help their students to make progress. Our genesis story is slightly unique in that Joe, my co-founder, and I wrote the very first version of this when we were at school ourselves to solve our own frustrations. So we were really fed up with not being able to get to things online because only the really geeky teachers were able to put anything up. And there was this kind of vicious cycle where because there wasn't anything up there, we didn't bother looking, and because we weren't looking, there was not much point in putting anything up, and it all sort of spiraled into disuse. And our original idea was if we can make it really easy for the teachers who aren't IT experts and don't really want to be to create and share things with us online, then we can break that cycle and make our own lives better. You know, I was fed up at cycling into school when I was supposed to be on study leave to pick up notes or hand in work or ask questions. And I remember surveying this sort of chaos of revision notes on my bedroom floor in the run-up to GCSEs and thinking that there has to be a better way than this. And I was the sort of kid who thought it was more fun to write that better way than to file the notes and do some work. So we initially wrote it for our own school. And that worked quite well. By the time we were doing A-levels, we were being pulled out of lessons to fix things and answer questions and explain to teachers how it worked. And the whole school was pretty dependent on this thing. And it became clear pretty early on, I think, that this wasn't just our school being backward. It was a general problem that schools around first London and then the UK, and it turns out the world, all faced, and that no one was really solving in the way that we thought it ought to be solved. So we went off to Oxford together, and we kept on developing this initially as a hobby in our evenings and weekends. Joe went off to UBS, I went to Cambridge and did a PhD, I went to Goldman Sachs, and for all of that time we kind of kept going, building this product in collaboration with a small number of schools and teachers and iterating to really build something that solved problems for students and teachers at the coalface, rather than trying to meet enormous specs written by people who are so far removed from the real challenges that ultimately they ticked a lot of boxes but didn't have any impact. So we kept going on that, and we grew pretty quickly through word of mouth. Schools are a close-knit community. Teachers move around, teachers talk to each other. And for the first number of years, we didn't raise any external investment at all. We were able to kind of pull the business up by its bootstraps because schools are paying us an annual subscription, and they're very, very loyal. So our annual retention rate's about 97% and has been ever since we started. And because they're paying that money up front, we can reinvest that in growing our team to expand further. And obviously, because we're software as a service, our gross profit margins are very high on that, so it allows us to keep on investing in sales and marketing and in product development. But at the end of last year, we thought there was a real opportunity to accelerate this and to build a global market-leading position. So we raised £4.5 million, which we think is the UK's biggest ever EdTech Series A, from BGF Ventures and Berengier ProVen VCTs. Just to echo Karen's comments, that was a fairly competitive process. We had 6 term sheets to lead that, and we were fairly picky about who we wanted to work with, because we wanted to find partners who we thought shared our long-term vision about transforming learning here, and who shared our values. And I've been really delighted with the decisions we made there. I think Stuart and the whole team have been really helpful and supportive, and we couldn't have asked for more on that front. So since then, we've been putting that money to work. We have now hired another 35 people to our team. Takes us to about 75 in total, both here in London, where we're based, and also now in Sydney, which gives us a true kind of follow-the-sun operation, so we can look after schools wherever they are in the world. We've continued to grow quickly, so this was our kind of initial growth in the UK independent sector where we started out. We're now used by more than half of all the students in that sector, including all of the kind of big names that have international brand recognition, and keeping up the theme now, including Prince George's School. Clearly there's a trend. And so most of our growth in the last few years has been focused on the UK state sector and in international schools around the world. So we're now used by about 400,000 students in 35 different countries. 3 broad strands that we're putting your money to work in are accelerating R&D to develop our product further. We think that we're really only still scratching the surface of the potential of technology in teaching and learning. So there's lots more that we can do there, particularly with the huge data assets that we're building on behalf of these schools. So as all of their workflow comes online, we understand every piece of work that students have done and their feedback and progress, and can help drive insight from that. Scaling out our sales and marketing operations to continue that growth in the markets where we've got significant traction today, and also laying the groundwork and doing the initial work to enter new big markets, because there are 750 million school students out there, and so far we're only reaching a pretty small fraction of that total. Last thing for me to say is thank you very, very much for your support. It's made a big difference to us. I'm very happy to chat over lunch or take questions if there are things that I can talk more about, but thank you.
Should we just, as you haven't got I don't think you have a stand.
We don't have a stand, but I'm happy to stick around and chat.
That would be fantastic. Thank you very much. So take your questions around lunchtime. That would be wonderful. We're running a bit short of time. But thank you again, Simon.